the In Conversation podcast series, with author Nigel Beckles.
Welcome to the podcast.
Please like the podcast and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.
Have you experienced several failed relationships or been through a divorce? How can you avoid making the same mistakes again? How to avoid making the big relationship mistakes is out now.
Hi, my name is Nigel Beckles. My new book is packed with practical and common sense strategies that you can use to make better relationship choices.
Now you can discover the dangerous myths about love. If your relationship expectations are realistic, why you could be falling in love for all the wrong reasons.
How to avoid making the big relationship mistakes. It's a book that could change your life.
Available from amazon.co.uk. Kindle version also available.
When the Mood is Right, A Poetry Journey and Mood Swings by Queen P. Available on Amazon and all good bookstores.
The Royal Affair
by Queen P.
Dim the lights, sit back, relax, and breathe. You have entered into the Royal Affair.
Queen P. Poetry podcasts available now.
The Royal Affair.
Get ready for takeoff.
Welcome back to my In Conversation podcast series. My guest for this episode is an author and also an advocate for raising awareness regarding sexual abuse and discrimination in the Catholic Church, American Margaret Mary O'Connor. Hi, Margaret. Welcome to my podcast series. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing real good. Thank you, Nigel. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. So where do you live at the moment?
I live in Buffalo, New York.
So did you grow up there?
Yes, I did.
And what was your childhood like?
I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, and I had two brothers, one older, and my younger brother, Paul, died when he was 11. I'm a fraternal twin, so there was never any worry about wearing identical clothes or, any type of issues like that. But my twin sister, Pat, died of cancer when she was 44. My mom was an organist at the Catholic Church. And when I was 4 or 5, I really enjoyed the Sunday weekend Mass. Back in the 1950s, growing up in the Catholic Church, for a girl, there really were no role models on the altar. It was always strictly men. And in fact, we were told, there never were woman priests within the Catholic Church. So, it really seemed pretty cut and dry. But when you think of what any woman has lost by not having role models of women on the altar, it's in a sense, it's your own religious heritage that has been lost. And what I mean by that is if you were a boy, say in a family, Christopher might have been a priest, your uncle Ryan was a bishop, and maybe your uncle Sean was a cardinal. Well, if you're a young boy, you have this experience, this religious heritage, within your family to see. Whereas in the context of a woman, we didn't have any of those examples for us. Yes, we had Mary, but we were looking to see a woman priest, and there just was none of that, unfortunately.
So why were you motivated to discuss sexual discrimination and abuse in the church?
Okay, I had been picketing for women's ordination. And then where I live in Buffalo, back in 2018, it started, we had I called him a bishop enabler. And basically he was looking the other way. And when these records started to come out, it was like a chessboard. You'd see all these priests were being moved all over, maybe from Buffalo to Orchard Park, to West Seneca, to East Aurora. And then this priest, his big thing was right away, we will have a prayer service. And it just struck me. Here's a man that's supposed to be representing God, and he's up there conducting a prayer service for victims that had been raped. And yet he's part of the problem. He was an enabler. That really just struck me. And I felt a personal call to come and picket. And then at the time I was picketing with Dan, who was a former victim. There was another lady there at one point that she herself had been raped by a sister. But what really struck me was, where was this throngs of other Catholics joining us? If there were 5 picketers at a time, that would be like a crowd. And then it made me really look back in our church history. We had a term called pray and obey. And what that basically meant was you never would question like your pastor, let alone what Rome did. Did you have any special training in this religious area? And I really think, especially within the Catholic Church, through the centuries preceding, obviously, the 50s, and then going into until maybe the 80s, and when things started to, come out, Catholics just never, that wasn't in your mindset to ever question what the hierarchy, what your bishop was doing, what your pastor was doing. And then after Vatican II, that was a council, and this Pope was really with it. He wanted to see the signs of the times. And he made changes, and then there was parish councils and that. But for the longest time, again, this was just wonderful for the church hierarchy because no one was questioning their moves, let alone watching what they were up to. And I think it's unfortunately an apathy that it's not ingrained in our mindset to be questioning. So you have a whole older generation, not that I don't want to put people in a specific category, but there are so many more in that generation. Obviously for them, this pray and obey had been going on for such a long time. They're very hesitant to question the hierarchy. And whether I was out picketing for the woman priest or on the sexual priest issue, they would come up to us and they would say, "You're the ones that are destroying the church. Stop lying to us. Go over to that other church 3 blocks away. You don't belong in the church. Ooh, she has the bishop's name on her sign." And what struck me then was they are so with the church, they're not taking time to even momentarily step back and see, the damage that's been done. So I did at one point say to a woman, I don't understand if this hierarchy, if they think it's all right, the children are being abused, they're being raped, then why can't I stand here and speak out against that? And the funny part was we didn't. We were a very quiet picket. When you think of a picket line, the union people are yelling, shouting. No, we let our signs speak for us.
It does sound like a culture of indoctrination to me. Do you think that has led to the numerous complaints against the Catholic Church worldwide?
Well, once, of course, this awful behavior. I mean, sexual abuse, there's just no excuse for it. And of course, it is spread because I look at just Buffalo dioceses, and there were over 100 priests. There's actually more, who knows how many more they've been hiding that we never knew about, that were charged as such. And that's just in Buffalo. Well, then let's go to Rochester. Let's go to Syracuse, Albany. Let's go all the way into New England. I mean, let's go through every single state, every diocese just in the U.S. And of course, that's not going over to Australia, going into Ireland, going anywhere in Europe, South America, anywhere basically where there are Catholic churches, where you have the hierarchy there. And this is so systemic that it is mind-boggling because, first of all, I don't know, where are these men coming from? I mean, don't they have any fear of God? That hit me in the back of my mind. I mean, how can they just make such a mockery out of what they are supposed to be living? I mean, let's face it, we knew Jesus as someone that was honest, someone that was truthful, and someone that wouldn't ever put up with such awful behavior. Obviously, if people that are allowing this, whether it's bishops, whether it's the cardinals, if they're never arrested, this is just going to go on and on. And we heard something shocking. There was a retired Buffalo police officer, and back in the 70s, he was recalling that it was just a given. Say a priest was arrested at nighttime in some park. Well, they would be, put in the police car, taken to the police station. But conveniently, they were never fingerprinted. Their pictures there was like no mugshot taken. A call was made to the chancery, and under the cover of darkness, some other priest would come and pick up this offending priest. So then you wonder, it's awful to say, but these thoughts go through your mind. Was there some sort of a payoff there? Just unbelievable.
So how do you raise awareness about this very important issue?
Well, picketing was my main means. And then I was just so personally disgusted with the realization of finding out that my church had lied to me, that there actually were women bishops, women priests, women deacons within the Catholic Church. And it was within the early past church history. That was the area that our Catholic Church till today never acknowledges. And I always wondered, why won't they? Well, of course, that's the time frame of these women in these specific positions. So anyway, I heard what I thought were rumors through the years that, yes, there were women priests. And you get to a certain age, and I thought, I'm going to try to get an answer to this, because obviously my hierarchy is not giving me, it's the same old, same old. So it wasn't until I discovered books like John Wingard's book, The Ordination of Women in the Catholic Church, or Gary Macy's The Hidden History of Women Priests, or there's even a Sister Chris Schenck, Christina and her sisters, early office holders. And they looked into the catacombs, and they have such really detailed, not only the pictures, but then the explanation behind them. And they give like an illustration where there's like a bishop and the way his clothes were, and the chair was whenever you would see that high chair, that was designated only for a bishop. So say that drawing of the bishop was on the left. Well, then on the right, there's this other drawing, and it's a woman now. And she's attired in priestly vestments that they said would have been like a bishop's vestments. And she's sitting in the same chair. So it's really amazing. But what I'm finding out through biblical research, that yes, we had women priests, women bishops, deacons, and the most famous of all women priests was Mary, Mother of God. And Jesus's mother was called Mary Priest. And her title was the model for all priesthood in the Catholic Church. So she went about 16 centuries from AD 300 up till 1927. And I wondered, well, wait a minute, what happened in 1927 that her title was taken away from her? And John Wingard said it could be a coincidence, but that same year, women from other faith denominations, they started to speak out that they wanted to become women priests. But Nigel, it was the way that her title was taken away from her. The Roman official was talking to the Roman newspaper man. It was the way you handled this question. It is good that this question be put to sleep. They're referring to Mary, Mother of God, like some type of an object. I found this very disrespectful.
Well, Margaret, you're actually an author yourself. So what is your book called and what is it about?
It's called Scandal in the Shadows, The Original Priest, Mother Mary. And it basically gives Catholics, Christians, a view of the Catholic Church like they've never seen it. Because most Catholics, millions of them, whether here in the U.S. or in Europe, they have no idea of this hidden history. It's a centuries-old scandal of lies and cover-up. And what do I mean by cover-up? Back in 1976, the Pope has his own commission. It's called the Pontifical Biblical Commission. And they came out explicitly, the findings said there is no reason why women can't become priests. So what did the hierarchy do? From 1976 till today, they've sat on that. Go back to 1974. There was an International Theological Commission, and this time they were looking into were there women deaconesses. So my question is if they would have only acted, and they did find indeed there were women deaconesses, Pope Francis never would have had to convene the 2016 hearing, which is still going on. They reconvened it with another group of people. They never came out what actually happened in the 2016 discussion. But going back in the early church, there were 3 Greek documents found, and they were all in agreement. Women back then were called women deaconesses. And whether it was the man or a woman that was going to be ordained as a deacon, they both were on the altar. They were in the presence of a bishop who officiated in prayer over them. And as he laid, hands over them, they each had like a stole put around their neck. They both took from the chalice, the cup, they drank from that. Yes, women were deacons. So here again, we've got this complete silence. And then even in Vatican II, they had councils like the Constitution on the Sacred Liturgy, the Constitution on the Church, and in the Constitution on the modern Church, Gaudium Spes, there was an Article 29, and that specifically wanted to get rid of any type of discrimination within our Catholic Church. Well, any type would have, of course, took care of the issue of women's inequality in our church. Nothing on that. And they've even disavowed Jesus's biblical words like Galatians 3:28, there is no man or woman, all are one in Christ Jesus. Or you go back further in Genesis, in the divine image, God created them, women and men. God made them. So Jesus has said that women are as equal as men, and yet in the church today, this isn't even on the hierarchy's radar. And this is really shocking, Nigel. Back in 2010, when our Pope Francis was a cardinal, his book on heaven and earth, he said in so many words that when the women feminists received their rights in regards to women's suffrage, now that would have been 1920. They basically received what they wanted. I mean, as a woman, do you mean since 1920 we don't have any other issues? But seriously, take that issue, put it back into the church. And if you have our current Pope thinking that this isn't, women's equality isn't even an issue, yes, the women in the Catholic Church are really in dire straits. And that's why, if there's that sort of thinking, is maybe why they don't move on their own commission's findings, whether it be 74 or 76 from what Vatican II said, and even completely disavowing Jesus's biblical words on women's equality.
What did Vatican I and Vatican II involve?
I'll tell you, Vatican I really don't know. But Vatican II, this would have been back in the 60s. It convened in 62, and there was a Pope, John the 23rd. And he came out and said that he wanted to open the windows of the church. He wanted, in other words, the church to see the signs of the times. And through research that they did, just as an illustration, it used to be if any priest was saying a mass in the Catholic Church, no matter where he was saying it, his back was to you. Like if you were sitting out in the pews, if you look forward to the altar, you would see the priest's back. Well, after Vatican II, the priest turned around and was facing you. The priest was no longer saying the mass like in Latin. He was saying it in English. And if you're one, like I didn't know Latin, to me, it made a world of difference. You know what I mean? And I think it's more personable. You're seeing the person. But through research, and I think this is pretty neat, they found out that the current Mass that is said now is the closest thing to how the Mass was back in the earliest centuries of our Catholic Church. And there were, unfortunately, so many Catholics that didn't understand this because they always knew the Mass as the Latin Mass. And they never realized, go back centuries before that, our Mass was said in Greek. And before it was said in the Greek language, maybe it was in the Aramaic. There's been a change like that. So there really have been changes, even though I know the church moves very slowly. But in that procession, you're not going to see altar girls. You're not going to see any woman Eucharistic ministers or any, even within the church, you won't see like any woman electors. And to me, it's like they're trapped in a sense, like in a time warp, a time tunnel. I really find it sad because where is this economical movement to start involve, like, talking to other denominations? And this was another thing at Vatican II. And it was unheard of. Pope John had other ministers from other faith denominations come and actually attend, which was pretty neat.
And I wanted to ask you, during your work raising awareness, what organizations are you involved with?
There's Call to Action, Future Church, Women's Ordination Conference, Roman Catholic Woman Priest, and I also include SNAP. And this is for survivors of those who were abused by priests. So if Catholics that are listening or Christians are really upset and don't want to be a part of bringing back women priests in the church, if they could look at the issue of priest sexual abuse, because that's still going on. But getting back to these different organizations, it's really an avenue for anyone out there listening that, obviously you will be in shock, because I was in shock when I first, it was like unbelievable. But then if you want to move forward in a way, think, well, gee, what can I do to try to help? Because if we have factual evidence that there were women priests, bishops, deacons, and of course, Mary being the most famous woman priest, what can we do to try to turn things around? Well, I think the answer definitely is the current church hierarchy has to finally be accountable. You would say for what they've done, but in this case, it's for what they haven't done and should be doing. And that's going to take the average laity, that's the regular people that go to Mass every week, to get them, to become involved. And you might be thinking, oh, gee, am I doing something wrong? No, there is in the Constitution of the Church, in the specific one on the laity, it does say that any member of the laity can speak out on issues of importance. And of course, this for any woman, this is your religious heritage that you should be able to be a part of. If you get a personal call from Jesus and you want to become a woman priest, you as well should have that chance.
So, Margaret, how can people contact you?
You can simply go to my website, yourradicaltruth.com. That's yourradicaltruth.com. I have a petition, and the listeners, I would appreciate it. It's all your decision. If you find something there that you agree with, if you would sign that, because I am asking Pope Francis to reinstate Mary, Mother of God's title. And I'm asking him also to look into the issue of women's inequality in our Catholic Church today. And the petition is there. There's a chapter 4 that is free. They'd like to read that. And as well, there's my blog there. And then under the media section, if they want to listen to any of the, podcast shows to get a better idea of, what's going on with this issue.
Margaret in the USA, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Nigel. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Another In Conversation podcast coming soon.